My wife Jenny and I were married for 12 years before the life I knew was destroyed. We have two kids, 11-year-old Jacob and 13-year-old Allison. So now you know why everything I'm about to tell you still has me completely stunned and is quite hard to believe. I never suspected a thing over the last 6 months when Jenny would constantly leave the room I was in at moments while we were spending time together. Pointless trips upstairs to the bedroom or basement, or an unhealthy number of trips to the bathroom. Sometimes she would lie and claim she was doing things like changing out the laundry, and looking back, I don't know how I couldn't have figured it out. I mean, there's only so many reasons why you would be wandering around the house constantly, and she would always be sure to take her phone with her. So a few months after all of this suspicious behavior began, I wake up in the middle of the night one night, and once again, Jenny's in the bathroom. Only this time, she must have actually had to go because her phone was still on the nightstand. This is when she finally slipped up because while she was in there, her phone lights up with a notification. Being the middle of the night, I thought either this is from a family member and it's some kind of an emergency, although in that case, they probably would have just called, or it was someone she probably shouldn't be talking to, and the person who for the last 6 months had her so preoccupied making these strange trips around the house constantly. Well, guess which one it was. So I lean over the bed and glance at the phone. It was from some guy who I've never heard of before named Bruce. He sent a text saying, "When am I going to see you again?" with a winking emoji, and "I wish it was right now." I had no idea who this Bruce was. I'd never even heard the name before, and I didn't know when they could have possibly seen each other or for how long. But what I did know is that whoever this Bruce guy was, he either already had or was planning to sleep with my wife. Once I heard the toilet flush in the bathroom, I moved over to my side of the bed again and pretended to be asleep, with the phone still exactly as she left it. I figured if I confronted her right then and there, I wouldn't get the answers I wanted, so I played it cool and decided to lay low for a while until I could get more information. So as I'm lying there, I can hear her tapping away with her thumbs on the phone. Then I hear her doing something I won't go into detail about, but I'm sure you can imagine what I'm referring to. Let's just say that Bruce's messages, and probably some photos he sent her, got her excited. I couldn't believe this was actually happening while I'm lying there right beside her, gritting my teeth and doing my best not to let my anger get the best of me. Eventually, I'm able to fall asleep, and the next morning I acted completely normal like I knew nothing from the night before. And as far as I could tell, Jenny didn't suspect a thing. I knew the login info for her Apple account, so I signed into her iMessage from my iPad. That way, I could read every message they sent to one another, and unfortunately also see every disgusting photo. And there were many. Bruce was a bigger guy than I am, and I mean that in more than one way. He's sort of a hunky Fabio type, with more meat packed into his shorts, which only fueled my anger about the whole situation. So I prepared my plan to expose her lies and betrayal. And from that point forward, I tracked all of their interactions. Some of the time, I'd actually be on my iPad while she was taking her trips off to different corners of the house to chat with him, so I could see exactly what they were saying in real time. They would talk about missing each other and what they plan to do to or with one another the next time they meet up. Typical dirty crap you would expect from two lowlifes involved in an affair, and more photos than I would have preferred to see. But at least I had more evidence to provide my lawyer for the divorce. It was odd seeing the way Jenny acted or spoke to Bruce, because it was so much different than anything I'd seen from her throughout our entire relationship. It made me sick, and I'm not gonna lie, a little jealous. I could almost feel the steam rising from my scalp as I read through their discussions while they were chatting. And it took all the willpower I had not to run upstairs, rip the phone from her hand, and rip her a new one, screaming, "What the F are you doing? This is what you've been doing up here all this time lately?" But I luckily managed to calm myself and continue acting like I was oblivious to the whole thing. I don't think I can express with words how difficult this really was. Not even a monk has this type of willpower and self-control. Through their texts, I was able to discover when, where, and how they were able to have their meetups without me discovering it. Jacob and Allison had music lessons in the city about a 20-minute drive from the house 2 days a week. Luckily, I was able to get a deal on their lessons since they did them together. Although the entire lesson wasn't together, they would split half of each lesson and combine them so both would learn together for the first portion, then each would have some alone time with the instructor back to back. I would sit through both, and while one was having their solo portion of the lesson, the other would do homework or be on their phone. Being the devoted father I am and wanting the best for my kids, I always took them to their lessons. Jenny never did. In fact, she couldn't care less if they even took lessons, especially if it would require her to take time out of her day. Although I'm sure she was glad that they did, because during these trips, Bruce would come over, and to ensure they didn't get caught, Jenny would always send me 1 or 2 texts requesting details about our kids' lessons and how things were going. When she first started sending these texts, I initially found it strange that she suddenly was taking interest in our kids' activities, but I pleasantly assumed that she was just changing and becoming a more involved and devoted mom. Well, the reality was, she was just using my responses and the excuse of caring about our kids' progress as a way of ensuring we were still far from home and from catching her in the house with her new boyfriend. Once I figured out exactly when they would be meeting up and knowing it was right in my own home, assuming it was in my own bed, I made a plan to catch them in the act. This way, I would have not only the texts and pictures, but video as well. So over the next couple of weeks, from the time I first discovered the affair, I started sending all their texts and photos to a file on my iPad, and I bought a tiny, low-quality spy cam off Amazon that I placed between some decorative objects my wife keeps on the mantle across our room from the bed. I placed it there just before leaving with the kids for their lessons the following week. It's kind of a weird feeling, hoping your wife will actually bring another man into your own bed, but at this point, I could barely bring myself to care anymore. I just wanted as much evidence as possible, so if there was any dispute about custody after the divorce, I could be sure I had what I needed to have Jacob and Allison in my life as much as possible. After all, I'm the one taking the time to drive and sit through music lessons, among other things, while she's busy ignoring the kids and breaking up our family for some fun in our marital bed with some man who isn't her husband. But I don't mean to make it sound like I don't enjoy these things or like it's some sort of chore. Of course, I love taking them to their lessons and spending as much time with them as I can. It would just be nice if their mother shared this same view. So just before leaving, I set up the camera and turn it on to record, then go to the lesson with Jacob and Allison as usual. Part of the way through, as always, I get my text from Jenny and can't help but think to myself, oh, I guess the fun's starting. I decide to give her a little extra time and tell her I'll be taking the kids for ice cream after, so we'll be a little later than usual. I couldn't help but cringe when she responded with, "That's a great idea. Text me when you're actually on your way home." Sure thing. After the lessons and ice cream, we get back to the house. Of course, by this point, Bruce is long gone. Jenny looks as happy and relaxed as can be, and the kids go to their rooms. I can see her smiling while looking at her phone again, and I just know in my head that she's getting giddy over some crap that Bruce just sent her. I tell her I'm headed upstairs to the office for a bit, and of course, I can see multiple notifications on the messenger when I get there and open it up. I grab the spy cam from the bedroom and load the video onto the iPad, then plug in some headphones and watch in horror. As I'm watching, Jenny pops in and asks, "Are you planning to be up here long?" Probably hoping I'll be far from her while she continues flirting with Bruce over the phone. I'm startled by her entrance, not expecting it, and not wanting her to know what I'm actually doing, so I quickly exit out of the video and casually turn the screen towards my chest. Then stare at her for a second, in disbelief that I'm actually looking at the same person I just watched in this video, and the same woman I've been spending my life with for over a decade. I just tell her, yeah. And she's so wrapped up in her plan for the night that she doesn't even notice what I imagine was a completely disturbed look on my face. Her time with Bruce was completely opposite of how we were together. They did things in this video that I couldn't even imagine us doing, although some of it I have suggested before, but she always said it just wasn't something she was into. I won't describe what I saw, because I'm sure you can imagine. All I'll say is it certainly looked like she was enjoying herself. No wonder she had no concern about my current state of mind. I'm not proud of it, but even though part of me wanted to smash the iPad, For some reason, I couldn't look away and kept watching after she left the room. Then afterwards, I go downstairs, sit at the kitchen table, and have a drink. It's not like I didn't know what was happening or what she'd been doing all this time, but now that I've actually seen it, it was real. And I gotta say, I of course expected some of what I found, but certainly not all of it. At this point, there was no more guessing, no more assumptions, and somehow, the fact that he was so opposite from me made the betrayal feel even worse. Not to mention how much she seemed to be enjoying herself and the wild way she was acting compared to how it was with us for so long. I'm not gonna lie, I watched the video multiple times that week, and you're probably expecting that I'd get more angry each time, but it almost felt like each time I watched it, I was just pushing her further away and getting further from my feelings for her. Every viewing just reminded me more and more that this was no longer the woman I married. Obviously, she no longer loved me, and now I had fallen out of love with her. So now with all of my evidence, I decided I would catch them again, only this time I would confront them in person. I would take the kids to their lesson again the following week and show up at the house early to surprise them. Don't worry, I didn't do it while my kids were with me. The last thing I'd want is for them to know what a disgusting human their mother is. Although part of me would have enjoyed having them despise her as much as I was starting to. So the day of the lesson comes. I take the kids as usual, only I had prearranged for my mom to pick them up after and take them to her house for the night, since I wasn't sure exactly how this would play out, and I wanted to make sure they were nowhere around for the aftermath. And I also wanted to be sure I had plenty of time to do what I needed to do without being late to pick them back up or making them aware of what's going on at home. I didn't tell Jenny my plan either, or the kids until after we got there, as far as them going to my mother's, in case they might happen to tip her off accidentally. So once we arrive, I let them know that their grandma wants them to come over and stay the night, and she'll be picking them up, and that I'll be coming over later with their stuff, after running some errands. It wasn't completely abnormal for the kids to stay with their grandma sometimes, so they didn't question it, and they were excited to spend time with her like they always are. So I take off during the lesson and head towards the house. On the way there, I can feel my palms starting to sweat as I'm tightly gripping the steering wheel. My breath is sort of quivering because I'm so stressed and nervous, not knowing exactly what's about to happen. But I'm replaying what I plan to say and what I think might happen over and over in my head. Suddenly my phone dings and it's Jenny with her usual message. I text her back, then park in the back alley a few houses down. I sit there for a minute thinking about our entire relationship and everything recently that led to this moment. Still in shock while my heart is pumping what feels like a million beats per minute. I sneak in quietly through the back door and can hear music playing and the sounds of Jenny moaning. Sounds like I got here just in time for the show. I gently creep up the staircase, avoiding the 3rd and 8th step, which tend to squeak pretty loudly. Although, from the sounds of things, I doubt they'd hear me anyway. Then I crash through the bedroom door, and what I see is something that will be burned in my memory forever. Even if I happen to develop Alzheimer's one day and forget every last memory I've ever captured, I imagine this one, the memory of my wife, bent over the same bed where our kids were conceived, taking it from another guy, will still be there. Bruce quickly pulls out and grabs the first thing he could to cover himself. So this is what you're up to, huh? Who the F is this guy? Although I sounded stern and angry when I said this, I was actually pretty calm at this point, all things considered. If I had walked into this scene with no prior knowledge of what she'd been up to, I probably would have flipped. But after everything I already knew and saw, at this point, I was well prepared and able to keep composure. Jenny screams while music is still blasting on our Bluetooth speaker, and before getting a response to my question, Bruce manages to properly cover himself, then heads towards the door. Jenny yells, "What are you doing here?" And as I'm telling Bruce to get the F out of my house, he's already running down the stairs and out the front door, still covering his junk with a t-shirt or whatever he managed to grab. Jenny's yelling a bunch of crap and apologizing, while I run out the front door too, yelling to Bruce never to step foot in my house again. Then while Jenny starts making excuses for herself, I tell her we're getting a divorce, and she starts with the, "Please, no, we can fix this. I love you." I pack a bag for each of my kids with some clothes and other things. Then I grab a bag for myself that I already had packed and waiting in the back of the closet. I tell Jenny, I know everything, and there will be no reconciliation. And if you actually loved me, and you wanted to continue this marriage, maybe you should have thought of that before effing whoever this Bruce guy is. She then has a look of shock on her face, realizing that I know his name, and I walk out the door, ignoring whatever else she's trying to say to me. The entire time I was driving to my mom's house, and for the rest of the night, my phone is blowing up with texts and calls from her trying to discuss things. I ignore it all, then tell the kids I'll be picking them up from school the next day and we'll be staying at grandma's again because I'm taking the day off. And the next day, I take all the evidence to my lawyer, then break the news to the kids the next evening during dinner without giving them all the details of exactly what happened. When all was said and done, my kids were pretty angry with Jenny and chose to live with me and only visit her on the weekends, and not even every weekend. Luckily, Jenny didn't put in too much of a fight for custody, probably because this would give her more free time to be with her new boyfriend, but from what I've heard, he doesn't even want her anymore. Apparently, he was already in a relationship and engaged to be married. Once things were officially over with me and Jenny, she tried to pursue him for something more, and he stopped talking to her completely. Of course, Jenny wouldn't admit to this herself. I found out through a mutual friend she confided in, who luckily is a better friend of mine than she realized. Although it doesn't really matter. I guess it's just good to know things didn't work out for her, and now she's probably more miserable than I am. Although, even though I'm still pretty shocked about all of this and the way things turned out, I'm getting over it fairly well. I still haven't dated yet. I'm just taking things one day at a time, and am happy I still have as much time as I do with my kids. Hey viewers, if you like this new style of content and want to help out the channel, click like, leave a comment below, share the video, or watch another one because I'll have more of these posted regularly each week. My long form stories will have a pink thumbnail outline and an iRelät stories emblem in the top left corner. Thanks for watching, hope you all take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.